A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. There are a ton of spoilers in this video. I'm literally going to be giving my raw thoughts on A Court of Mist and Fury, ACOMAF, whatever everyone's calling it nowadays. I know I'm behind, I know these books came out a while ago, but I just started reading them and I am absolutely loving them so far. I will say though, I started this book like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I read the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, way faster than I read this book. But I do think that this book was better than the first book. And I'll go through the scenes that I particularly remember because I just thought that they were very well written scenes. And I'll give you my raw thoughts. So what I thought was pretty cool was the book just sort of picks up right where they left off. Feyre is obviously in her new fairy body, which I feel like would be a very exciting thing. I mean, you go from living in a village, like scavenging for food and trying to support your family, to your family being essentially financially free because of Tamlin. And now you're an immortal fairy that is also extremely powerful and good looking. Like, I guess Feyre is good looking from what I've gathered in the reading. So I would assume that life is good. But throughout the first couple chapters, I remember Feyre was having these nightmares. Like, she kept seeing the two innocent fairies that she had to stab before she stabbed Tamlin, and then that whole thing happened. She was able to take out Amarantha. So there's a lot of guilt brewing right off the bat, a lot of nightmares, and you sort of think that it would have been smooth sailing. Like, it would have been their happily ever after, at least after the first book. But what got the story really going was the fact that Feyre is sort of being haunted by guilt, and also she has this tattoo, which is an agreement or bond that she's sharing with Rhysand, who's up in the Night Court at this point. So there was a bit of reluctance in like the wedding planning, and we had these new characters that were being presented. One of them was Ianthe, who was this priestess or high fae priestess, and I could kind of tell that she was sort of being a little bit of a puppet master. Like, she was definitely pulling some strings. She was a little suspect, if I'm being honest. And she's really pushing for this wedding. Everyone seems to be pushing for this huge wedding that's gonna happen between Feyre and Tamlin, which is exactly what I thought both Feyre and Tamlin deserved after everything that they went through. But that doesn't happen. And instead, while walking down the aisle, Feyre starts to get cold feet. And she starts freaking out, at least mentally. And through her reluctance, all of a sudden Rhysand just shows up, has some snarky comment like he always does, takes Feyre, and then they just disappear. And I learned later that disappearing is actually called winnowing. And Feyre ends up in the Night Court, which starts this really fun dynamic where Feyre and Rhysand are staying true to the bargain that they had initially worked out, with Feyre going up to the Night Court to spend time with Rhysand for, I believe it was like 1 week per month. And while Feyre and Rhysand were bumping heads at first, she starts to become exposed to the Night Court, which is beautiful. She eventually sees Velaris, which seemed like a really cool place. And I remember starting to see these different layers to Rhysand. So in the first book, Rhysand seemed like this sort of shallow figure in the first book. And then I think that Feyre's visits to the Night Court in the second book started to give us this side of Rhysand that was almost surprising, but it was a whole new level of depth. And we saw a bunch of new characters who were really cool. Feyre's introduced to Morrigan, Cassian, Azriel, and Amren. And I was really getting like Edward Cullen vibes when he introduces Bella to the whole family. And that was what I started to feel like this was. And you know, Feyre was all in right away. So as all this is happening and Feyre's being exposed to the Night Court, and she's starting to open up to Rhysand a little bit, she has this one particular moment when she's back in the Spring Court, and Tamlin basically locks her in the house with magic. Now, Tamlin and Lucien were dealing with a threat on the western coast, which I guess, you know, we later find out is Highburn. This is where it gets pretty interesting, because this initiated like the part of the book where Morrigan saves Feyre while Feyre's having a panic attack, takes her to the Night Court. And I remember, like, as Feyre and Rhysand are getting closer together and we're being exposed to like the Illyrian war camps and Feyre's growth as she learns more about her powers and how to utilize them for good. She goes to the Summer Court and everything. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering two things. One is, where's Tamlin? And two, Was Tamlin in the wrong? Hear me out. You should never lock someone in a room or lock someone in a house. But the way that I saw it was, Feyre's 19. And I think like the average fairy, from what I gathered, at least with the fairies that were being introduced in the book, it was almost like the average age was like 400 to 500 years old. Feyre is not only a brand new fairy at the age of 19, like she's only been a fairy for 3 months. And not only is she brand new, but she's the most powerful out of all of them, or at least that's what the rumor is, or that's what I know as a surface level reader right now who's only on book 2. So I'm thinking to myself, is Tamlin in the wrong for keeping Feyre protected in the home? Because Feyre did know that because of all the powers that she has from all of the other High Lords, she was going to be sought out by other High Lords and other powerful fairy figures. And I remember Tamlin mentioning that they would want to breed her, or like breed with her, and have powerful offspring. So that made Feyre almost a target. And if Tamlin, being the authoritative figure that he is, needs to deal with the threat on the western coast, you know, he wants to protect Feyre, so therefore he locked her in the house. And yeah, okay, I know Feyre does not want to be locked in the house. You should never lock anyone in the house, but I do understand Tamlin's motives. I guess that's the point I'm trying to portray. I understand Tamlin's motives. I understand where he's coming from. So the whole time during the book, I'm like waiting for him to pop up and explain himself, or for Feyre to understand. But instead, she like breaks it off with Tamlin. There's a crazy encounter with Lucian and some others, and Feyre winnows like through Lucian. That was awesome. I guess, yeah, so in the middle of the book, I was sort of craving this face-off between Tamlin and Rhysand. But I think I understand Sarah J Maas' motive here. Like, I think this second book, we're still building toward a war that's gonna break out. But also, we need to see this relationship develop between Rhysand and Feyre, and also the relationship between Rhysand and his people, Velaris and the Night Court, you know, which is divided in two. You got the Court of Nightmares and the Court of Dreams. Like, it's very complex. But with Sarah J Maas' writing style, I don't think it was hard to grasp. Really interesting and pivotal scene, I think, was when Rhysand and the others, I guess the whole group, went down to the Court of Nightmares and were exposed to this darker side of the world that he essentially runs. And he had to put on this show, and he treated Feyre in this very like objectifying way. It was just an act, but it was so pivotal, I think, in the moment where I believe that's like the first time Feyre really started to open herself up to Rhysand, and you could tell from the writing that there was a shift. Like, she was starting to develop this physical attraction toward Rhysand, who's obviously very good looking, and everyone loves Rhysand, so, you know, it was bound to happen at some point. Another crazy moment building on that was when Feyre captured the Surreal. She's 2 for 2, by the way, on capturing Surreals. And the Surreal tells her that her and Rhysand are mates. So this made me think, wow, okay, does Tamlin know? And if Tamlin knows, would he be okay with that? Not that it would matter if he's okay with it, but just in general, like, Tamlin trying to wrap his head around it, because, let's be real, if Feyre wants to be with Rhysand, Tamlin should let her be with Rhysand. You don't want to be with someone that doesn't want to be with you. Rhysand and Feyre being mates, I think, is just a pivotal point or statement that should be declared to all the fairies. Should it not be? Am I tripping? I don't know. What was really cool too is when Rhys gave his whole backstory as to how he had this connection with Feyre before she even became a fairy, and it had something to do with one of the starry paintings that Feyre had put on her, I think it was a section of the table, or it was in her old home in the village. And then there was the music when she was in Amarantha's cell under the mountain. And there were all these bits and pieces, and we got to hear Rhys's side of sort of how their bond came to fruition through Rhysand's perspective. That was pretty cool. The action really started picking up when Hybern attacked Velaris, so that was crazy to see how the witches, I called them witches, how the mortal queens turned against the one who gave Feyre the second book of breathings, or the second part of the book of breathings. It was really crazy to see how Feyre started to unleash her powers for Rhysand's people, but also, I mean, her people, right? Because she ends up becoming a high lady. the first ever, I think. She's the first ever High Lady in all the history of Prithian, which is pretty awesome. I mean, Rhysand's really hooking her up. She deserves it, but like, Rhys is also hooking her up. Alright, so after all the back and forth between like Hybern forces, and then you have Farah, and she's proven herself by stealing the ring from the Weaver, which ends up being Rhysand's mother's ring, and it was destined to end up in the hands of his mate, because whoever was able to steal it from the Weaver was going to be powerful enough for Rhysand, and it was Farah, which was awesome. So after all of these moments of Farah proving herself to Rhysand and everyone else, and making friends and joining this family and earning the respect of Illyrian warriors and everything, everyone ends up in Hybern. And that was when I was exposed to Julian, like real Julian, not just the eye and the ring on Amarantha's finger, but actual Julian, which is pretty cool. Like, I was pretty excited. I was like, all right, cool, we got a villain. Like, we have a villain in the mix, a real villain. And we got Julian, we got the King of Hybern, and then Lucian and Tamlin walk out. Finally, like, I finally got my matchup. I was waiting for this. I was waiting for this. I put the book down for a sec. I was like, Lucian and Tamlin. But then I thought to myself, Lucian and Tamlin are working with Hybern. Lucian was one of my favorite characters in the first book. He was my favorite character. He still kind of is my favorite character. Especially because the moment that Nesta and Elaine get put into the cauldron and turned into fairies, Lucian has this moment where he looks at Elaine and he goes, "You're my mate." And it reminded me of freaking Twilight when Jacob looks at Bella's daughter and goes, you know, he imprinted on the daughter. Because I think there was a lot of reluctance with Farah. She's like, don't get any ideas. The ending was very powerful. It felt very quick, the way that everything kind of happened. So Farah's agreement bond gets broken between her and Rhys, which was sad to see because the relationship obviously was developing the entire book. Azriel was seriously injured, you know, Cassian also to a certain degree. But they were able to get out of there because Farah pretended like she wanted to go back with Tamlin. So now Farah's back in the Spring Court with Tamlin and Lucian. Nesta and Elaine, I believe, are in the Night Court. And we even got Rhys's perspective, I think in the second to last or third to last chapter, where he's basically saying there's gonna be a war. So I'm so ready for book 3. In all, I think that this was an amazing book. This is my first romantasy series I've read ever, and I'm seriously enjoying it. I'm actually reading these books faster than I've read contemporary romance books, and they're like twice the size of contemporary romance books on average. So yeah, I'm so ready to dive into the third book. I'm ready to see a freaking war. I want to see how Lucian and Elaine end up kind of together, if Rhysand and Tamlin go head to head, or if they join forces and then go after Hybern. I'm curious to see where Farah's dad is in the mix, because now his girls are gone and they're also fairies. Also excited to see Amren's true form, if that comes. I want to see if Cassian and Nesta end up becoming a thing, because there were some nods to that. And I have a feeling a baby is coming soon. I think Farah's gonna have a kid within the next 2 books. But yeah, that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching this review of ACOMAF. If you're looking for a current read, I'm the author of 3 novels. Oh, wait, 4. I am the author of 4 novels that I highly recommend reading. The first is Right My Wrongs, which is a story about 2 songwriters who fall in love through the songs they write together. The second is called Someday Soon, and it's about 2 heartbroken strangers who end up stranded on an island together. The third is Night After Night, the story about an up-and-coming nightclub promoter who gets exposed to the Hollywood party scene. And my 4th book is a psych thriller called Look Away, which is about a TV show that manipulates people into ending their own lives on television. So thanks so much for watching my review. Also, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more book content from me.